That could be termed as embarrassing, but also understandable, especially if you listen to what Kirby Smart had to say after the game. Welcome to Florida State Seminoles Live right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all stopping by. FSU on into the off season for 2024, of course. We got big game James Coleman right next to me. Den Media Group's your destination. We will leave the link in the chat. Got to follow James there as well as on Twitter. You will see the handle here very soon. Chris Frazier as well, Spear Addicts. And of course, we will drop that link as well. Guys, how we doing tonight?
I'm good.
Tired.
Good and tired. All right, we'll take it. Chris, appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate both of you. Without these two, and George, of course, who hosts our post game, we would not have a Florida State channel these days. So we appreciate these guys showing up, delivering the knowledge. Well, James, you probably talked out that Orange Bowl performance probably way beyond anything. I'm much too late to the party, but we're going to ask you for one more take on it. And unfortunately, these bowl games have gotten to a place, and this is the classic example. This is the classic example. Every other bowl game, you could say, well, he was out. What do you, how do you measure these teams? No starting quarterback here. But this was a team that was just decimated and really wasn't the same football team.
Right. And it was crazy going up until the final hour, like right before the game. When Josh Farmer, Brandon Fisk, and Tatum Bethune all were opt-outs like the day of the game, I was like, okay, like this is gonna get ugly really quick because you're on your third string D tackle as a starter going up against them. And a lot of people talk about, well, Georgia had opt-outs, and I always ask them who are the opt-outs, and they'll bring up one. And we'll talk about it, and that's a big one, the tight end, Brett Bowers, but he was hurt. He wasn't an opt-out. He just didn't play. But McConkey, Carson Beck, they had a ton of, like, their starters were there. And one thing we learned was that Florida State's third-string guys don't hold a candle to Georgia's starting guys. And, you know, it doesn't matter how good you are when you don't have your strength. And of that strength, I mean, you're talking about 6 NFL guys on offense and 5 to 6 NFL guys on defense. Like, that's just not it's just not going to be a good battle, especially with quarterback. But they did some things that I thought were pretty good. But one thing I'll say is this: is we can't complain. We can't say for a whole month this game doesn't matter. This game doesn't matter. This game doesn't matter, and then expect the kids and then get mad at the kids for saying that the game doesn't matter. All of a sudden it doesn't. Like, if it didn't matter, then whatever the outcome is the outcome. And we don't take that as seriously. Even Kirby Smart, as you said, I mean, the only people who think that was indicative of what the Florida State team in 2023 was are trolls and people who would never be considered for a bowl, for the playoff game or the bowl. And I just think we may get better play with the playoffs next year. I think where Georgia was in a different place. They return a lot as well. So a lot of these guys are going to come back and try to make a playoff run next year. So there was less reason for their starters to opt out as opposed to Florida State guys. A lot of these guys were guys who this was their shot at it, and they were going. And the NFL was the next thing. But Georgia's good, and Georgia did what I expect the bully to do, and it sucked to be on the other side of it, but I think Mike Norvell's speech at the end was really good and indicative. And sometimes things don't go your way, and but you can't just quit and not show up. And that's kind of what happened with Florida State, man. It was definitely a slaughter. I liken it to the Spartans at the 300. I liken it to that because they definitely were slaughtered on that battlefield.
Chris.
I kind of wish that the bowl games mattered like they did 15 years ago. But at the same time, like, we can't ask these kids to give us their all when college football don't give their all. The powers that be said that 13 games that you won didn't matter, so what's the 14th one matter? That's how I think these NFL guys took it, the ones that are going into the NFL. The reason they opted out is, well, I was told that 13 of the ones we won didn't matter, and everybody keeps saying, well, if you'd have beat Georgia, you'd have proved your point. Proved what point? The point was already proven. There isn't nothing else to prove. You won 13 games. You were a ACC champion, and you got told you weren't good enough. Winning that 14th one wasn't going to automatically put you into a playoff. It didn't mean anything as far as playing in that game. So I'm not mad at any of the kids or any of the young men that didn't go in and play in the game, because this is what college football turned this into. It turned it into not meaning anything outside of the playoffs, which we all call it the invitational. So if you're not in the invitational, what's the point in playing the game? Then, everybody said, well, Georgia's guys showed up. They didn't opt out. Yeah, they're coming back. Last year when we went 10-3 and we went and played in our bowl, Jared Verse, Trey Benson, Johnny Wilson, all of them played in that game because they were returning to go after a national title this year. Then they went on a 13-game winning streak of this year, and totality was 19, and they got told they weren't good enough. The season ended the moment that the committee said you weren't good enough. There was no sense in another game. It made no sense because you got told 13 didn't matter. How's the 14th one matter? That's all I've got on
it. Yeah, it's just wild. And what's wild is watching Michigan, Alabama, and then watching Texas, Washington. I got Michigan and Washington definitely deserved it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I think, and again, we didn't have Jay Trav, but watching Brock Glenn's performance against a fully strength Georgia defense without Keon Coleman, without Jaheim Bell, without Johnny Wilson, watching him throw for more yards and have more competent quarterback play than the reason why Florida State was excluded in Alabama's, and because Alabama had better quarterback play. But like, it's not, again, they're there, but like, to watch what you were replaced with, and you listen to why you were said you weren't there, and the quarterback play was far from competent, and you're just like, this was a defensive game. Our defense is good. Our defense, like the Louisville game, proved that our defense was what it was at full strength. You watch, like, or even if it was Washington or Texas that we were paired against, you're saying that a defense that gave up, I believe, 3 passing touchdowns all season was going to all of a sudden just not be able to do it. I look forward to watching the national championship, but at the same time, you watched it, you just were like, this wasn't the message, the clear message in which we thought. And forget Florida State. We didn't deserve it. Say it. Cool. You can't tell me that team that Georgia marched out there in the Orange Bowl would not have put up a better performance against a Michigan or a Washington than what we saw. Like, they were 19, they were with 29-0, 29 wins in a row. They lost once. Why didn't you use the excuse that you used for TCU? For Georgia, who was a 2-time national champion, defending national champion. And that was literally it wasn't like they got blown out by Bama. They lost. Just like Bama lost to Texas. Actually more impressive than at home. But, it's just, those are the things that kind of like, you sit back and you watch these games, the games that matter. And you're like, that's what it was. I just was expecting to see, I was watching, hoping to see, like, okay, I'm going to really feel like Georgia or Florida State shouldn't have been in this game. And I can't say I did. But that's kind of my whole thing with that.
Hey, George.
What's going on, fellas? Sorry, I was running a little bit behind this afternoon.
No worries. Appreciate you being here. George,
Absolutely.
Renegade Report. Get over there, folks. We will drop the links again for all 3 of the platforms for these 3 throughout the show here. James, I'll ask you this question, not that everybody can't chime in, but from a player perspective, So Chris talked about, well, you both talked about when the names started to drop on game day. And I'm assuming that wasn't out of disrespect. That was more so out of keeping Georgia guessing as late as possible. And then once guys start to make a decision, I got to think that if Jared Verse says I'm going to play and Johnny Wilson says he's going to play and Keon Coleman says he's going to play, then other guys are going to say they're going to play. But there's obviously a tipping point at some point where some players are like, well, if none of those guys are playing, why should I play?
From what I understand, that's basically how it was going down up until, like I always tell people, when a slight happens, don't listen to somebody right away. Emotions are still raw and everything was there. But I think as it got a little bit further away, you're like, man, I don't want it to end like this. I want to get one more last go with my brothers, talking to Kalen DeLoach. And I think what happened was, obviously Johnny Wilson had some really serious, not serious, but he had some injuries that he just needed to let his body heal so that he can go perform as good as he needed to for the combine. There was no fear of injury. It was just he was already kind of banged up and just needed some rest. Keon and Jared Verse, I think it was more of a, what more do I really have to prove? It was a tough decision, but it's kind of like, what do I need to do? What more do I need to do for this? But I believe Fisk, Farmer, and Bethune went down to Miami with the intention to play. I think even Jerry and Jones and Green, I believe, went down with the intentions to play. I'm not going to say this is exactly what happened, but I have a good feeling that when they just talked to Mike and they just really looked at this, hey, man, you've given me a lot. If you want to play, you want to play. But, man, I'm not going to ask you. You don't owe me anything else. You don't owe me another, like, Fisk, you got some ouchie boo-boos you need to rest for the combine. You don't owe this to me. Farmer had hand surgery, and like as a guy who's played with a broken hand, it don't tickle. It doesn't feel great, especially when you have to engage and use your hands. It's just like, man, you guys don't owe us this. Like, go, I appreciate you trying. And I think that was Mike being a little bit more, in my opinion, I think Mike was being more thinking about their future as opposed to letting them come off of the emotion of wanting to play for your brothers. But I don't think it was any kind of skullduggery or strategic, because I think Georgia just felt I've got cats and I know what they run, and I'm going to run what we run and make them have to beat us out of it. And even in it, like, no troll aside, there were 3 interceptions, and I talked about this because I got Carson Beck is from Jacksonville, attended Mandarin High School, the school that I coach at. And his coach was my son's godfather. We watched the game together. And I was talking to him about it. And he was like, Carson on paper looks like he had a great game. And he did. But, man, he's like, James, there were 3 interceptions that you guys dropped. There were 2 fumbles that you guys should have recovered. That was 5 drive stoppers. But when you look at who got like Conrad Hussey, a true freshman, you look at some of the guys that got those things, they're just in positions where to make the play that they're just not used to making the play. Destin Hill, great over-the-shoulder catch inside of the 5, just outside, foot just outside. Like, good throw by Brock Glenn. And I'm going to be honest with you. Watching the SEC championship, I didn't think Brock could throw the ball forward. Like, I was terrified. I didn't know what the hell we had going on. So to see that version of Brock Glenn, like, made me feel a little bit different. But, dropping number 21, how many drop passes did he have that could have been first downs and could have extended drives? I'm not calling him out of being, but just saying but he's not. That's not where he's been at. So that's why I say when people like, if we talking ball, we talking ball. We lost. But, man, Keon probably makes some of those plays. Johnny makes some of those plays. Jaheim makes some of those plays. They've dropped it too, but in big games, they made big plays. I wish that we had that better showing, but like I said, man, anybody who really believes that, again, you're trolling or you don't really know football. And again, Kirby's statement at the end of it was really the like y'all need to fix this. Like Kirby was like, I shouldn't have had to do this. This wasn't. It was almost like this ain't like he almost want to say this ish ain't right, but I had to do what I had to do. But like that's the big thing. But like I said, I don't think we were trying to play with Kirby's head. Kirby's too good for that. Like, I think it was mainly, and then these guys have agents. These guys talk to each other. They probably already know the real going into it. But I do wish we could have gotten them all together for one more time. Because again, you see, look at actually, you want to know indicative of what would have happened? Have you seen what's happened to Alabama since the since the end of the game? I believe they had 9 players enter the portal within 15 minutes of it being open. Like, imagine if Alabama was supposed to play in the in our spot. Or Alabama, excuse me. Imagine if Alabama's playing Louisville in the Orange Bowl. Alabama would be the one that wouldn't have anybody left to play, and we would be talking about Saban a little bit differently. But hey, losses happen.
Yeah, man. The difference is, and y'all may have covered this in the first couple minutes, but the way I see it, Mike Norvell, yeah, he, to answer what Mark was talking about, he probably could have talked a couple extra guys into staying. He has that currency with him. He probably could have asked, but like James said, he never would, because what happened after going 13-0 and immediately not being able to celebrate that championship, being told no, everything that he has preached, building this program for the past 4 years, bringing it like to where it is. He asked everything of these kids. He doesn't take it easy on them. These, the winter workouts, everybody talks about it. They're insanely crazy. The culture is great. It is what it is. But, everything that he preached to them for 4 years basically got said, okay, you did everything you were supposed to do. You can control everything you control. And they said that wasn't good enough. So he got it. So it's like he wasn't gonna, somebody had surgeries, the different guys that had off season, surgeries they got early. Look, if it was a playoff, they'd have been there. Alabama, they got to go. We all saw it. We saw the game on national TV. We saw why the players didn't. If you couldn't watch that and understand why the Florida State players were upset and didn't play, it is what it is. Would you have liked to had everybody? Yeah, but I don't think it's like a thing to where they were going to play, all of a sudden they didn't. I think why announce and then get beat up on social media for a month? They wanted to be there with their brothers. They weren't leaving campus or whatever. They just weren't ready. They weren't going to risk it. They were getting ready to go to the draft. But yeah, nothing nefarious behind it. Just a once in a decade situation, once ever. It's something that'll never happen again in college football. Never happened before. And it just is what it is.
Chris, we move onward here. And Jordan Travis has left a remarkable mark on this program in so many different ways. And I'm not going to say it's the last one, but it's the last one for this season and moving forward in 2024 to make all the right conversations to DJ Uiagalelei to get him to come to Tallahassee. And DJ had some great things to say about those conversations and how impressed Jordan Travis has been with his relationships with all the various members of the coaching staff and the way the scheme has worked for him and will work for DJ and allowed him to grow and the coaching and development. And so here we go toward 2024.
I mean, if you're a Florida State fan and Jordan Travis isn't in your top 5, I don't know who you're looking at personally, because of what the young man endured, under another coaching staff. Then, having a shock, of, man, I might need to switch positions because I'm being told I'm not a quarterback. And then all of a sudden you get told that they have enough faith in you to be a Heisman candidate or a Heisman winner. And you develop the way that he did. That's why I keep bringing up the fans. They're all, well, Brock's not this or this kid's not that. And I'm like, well, neither was Jordan Travis when Mike first got here. He wasn't that either. It's a little bit different. Like Kalen DeLoach, he just needed the opportunity to play. He was what he is. He's always been that. Has he gotten better? Probably. But he's always been what he is. Jordan needed true development and coaching to get to where he was and now where he is at. But Jordan's a Knoll through and through. I mean, he's recruiting on his way out. Like this is it. Like he's not playing here anymore. He's getting PT'd, physical therapy being done there in Tallahassee. But the entire time that he's got a cast on, he's either rolling on the sidelines at the Orange Bowl, rolling on the sidelines at the ACC Championship, rolling on the sidelines against Florida. Or just the kid doesn't stay away from Florida State for what he loves. He loves the university. He definitely loves Mike Norvell and Tony Tokarz and Alex Atkins and so on. But he has a true relationship with each and every one of the members of that football team as well. And he's continuing to create relationships with guys that are coming in, DJ U being one of them. I think a lot of people don't realize that Jordan's talking to a lot of guys. He's talked to a lot of the recruits that ended up coming, like Cam Davis and so on. He's done probably just as good recruiting as any coach on that staff. He's probably done just as well as any of them. And he's given it to him from a player perspective. He's given it to him from a perspective of, I was this, I've been developed into this. All you have to do is be willing to put in the work. You put in the work, they'll put in the work. They'll be beside you the entire time, and they'll be behind you to keep pushing you forward. I've got to hear some of his conversations with guys or see them. So Jordan's probably going to go down as one of my favorite players of all time. Statistically is one thing, but the true nature of who he is, the character that he is, it's second to none. So he's just one of those guys.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I agree 100%. And Jordan Travis isn't the only one. This is something you've seen year over year. Jermaine Johnson was only here for 1 year, headed out in the first round. On his way out, who did he bring to Tallahassee? Jared Verse. Jared Verse is here 2 years. He's on his way out of Tallahassee, going to the draft. Who was hosting Marvin Jones Jr. when he came to town and locking down that commitment. So it's just a credit to that culture that, like we were kind of hinting at earlier, that's been questioned out there. The people that really know these players inside the program, there is no question of a culture. Jordan Travis, I think he's like second or third in tons and tons of different records throughout the record books throughout his time here. He was absolutely invaluable to the team. You saw it, how the rest of the world reacted, how the whole snow happened and everything. It all started with him going down. Definitely top 5 player in Florida State history. You just can't say enough great things about him. And it's awesome to see how far he is in that rehab. I don't think people realize, how tough this dude is, and that the fact he is going to come back and he's going to make a run at the NFL. And we're just all pulling for him moving forward.
I'm not going to say he's not in the top 5, but I'm going to say that's a tough list to crack in the top 5. So
FSU?
Yes.
As far as best players, if you're talking like NFL prospects and stuff like that, I don't know about them. That's not what I'm talking about. As far as what he brought, plus or minus wins to Florida State and what he meant for the program over that 4 or 5 year period, like for me, easily. You think of Jameis Winston, you think of, Ward, Winky, and, Travis, he didn't get the Heisman, but like he was that 4th quarterback to go undefeated, to do so many different things and in the record books. So I guess that's the side I'm on. I wouldn't put, if you're going to do 5 NFL talents or whatever, best players ever to play college football coming out, that's a tougher conversation. But as far as what he meant to the program, he's top 5, no doubt, to me.
Sounds like a good conversation for the off season at some point. We can all come with our top 10 rankings and deliver those. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's just a lot of quarterbacks that people forget about how good, but I think the problem is that where you have to give him probably like 3 years of significant playing time. Whereas a lot of people haven't really gotten that at Florida State. I mean, even your greats like Charlie Ward. Chris Winkie had 3 years, 3 national championships. Charlie Ward had 2 significant years. Jameis had 2 years, but those will be your top 3. Danny Cannell Danny only got 1 year, if I remember correctly, right after Charlie. He had Thad Busby, Brad Johnson, who got benched, I believe, but he had a pretty good. Those guys just won, so like it was tough to still like take them away. But man, boy, the last 2 years have been incredibly fun to watch. Going 10-3, and 13-1, with 19 in a row. Incredibly tough, and then being as dominant as he was over rivals, with 3 victories against Miami and 2 against Florida, even though he didn't necessarily beat Florida last year, but he's 1-1 as a starter against Florida. So he definitely would be somebody that you have to put up there. And I think when you win championships, you have to. They did win an ACC, so and a lot of people think think highly of EJ Manuel and Christian Ponder. I think he's definitely better than them. I think he'd have to be over those guys. And shoot, like I said, like somebody brought Casey. I always tell people Casey Willen and Danny Cannell both finished in like the top 5 of the Heisman Trophy. It just people tend to forget them because they didn't win natties or they weren't the other guys. So, but it's a tough one. Tough conversations. Like again, it's going to be a long off season. A lot of good topics.
I think those guys are kind of like McElroy in Alabama kind of thing, to where like he was like so much success, but he was on some loaded teams. Like you just saw Jordan come from the muck. I know we could talk about this all day, but yeah, definitely a fun conversation to have.
Well, let's talk about DJ, because I'm going to ask you guys to go back a month, let's say, and give me your evaluation of DJ as a quarterback, not as a Florida State quarterback, but trying to keep this as neutral as possible. How excited you are and how you evaluate this quarterback edition, because he's going to be the guy.
I think he's okay. He's a guy who truly got better at Oregon State than he was at Clemson. Obviously did not have the talent. They were clearly not one of the better teams in the Pac-12 before he got there. They were okay. Like I said, not bad, but they weren't better than Oregon. They weren't Utah. They weren't obviously Washington. They weren't a lot of these guys. But he went out, and I believe he was a top 16 QBR on the season this year at least top 30. Don't quote me on that, but I know he was one of the tops this season. I believe even higher than Jordan Travis at some point. Hear me what I'm saying. But also when I look at it, I think we look at what happened toward the end of Clemson, and a lot of us judge that. You see a guy who got benched by Cade Klubnik, who I believe had a really good game and had a lot of prestige coming in, and we forget that the kid did not have any. There was just literally no film for North Carolina, and North Carolina's defense wasn't that great for him to be able to come in and do that. But then you saw once somebody had a good month of film on him, like they were able to completely pick him apart and destroy him. DJ went 25 for 7 when it comes to stats, if I remember correctly, this season. You got it right here. Oh, my bad, 21 for 7. Maybe he scored 4 touchdowns, but it was actually damn near same stats that he had at what actually gives you a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I'm gonna take that because right now I'm gonna tell you what it's better than, and this is no knock on Brock, but it's better than Brock Glenn is right now. And I would have preferred Cam Ward until I saw something else at Oregon State. When I looked at Cam Ward had just as many interceptions, had more passing yards. But when I looked at what the offense was, the next leading rusher had 300 yards. But when I looked at what Oregon State had an 1,100-yard rusher. So if I want a more balanced attack, which is what we've been running here the last few years with Mike Norvell, this is a guy that might be able to do it. Plus, he's 250 pounds. Like that young man get to moving a little bit. If he's scrambling, some business decisions might get made. So I'm not opposed to it. I need that completion percentage to be a little bit higher, but I think at the end of the day, I think he could be a poor man's Jordan Travis.
Yeah, man, I agree with everything James just said. I think a lot of people don't realize how much he kind of carried that Clemson team. He really, really impressed me when they played us. Obviously, they got us that year with him. They really handled us that year. I think, you really saw it this year with what Cade Klubnik looked like the first month and a half of the season and all of Clemson's struggles. I think that really made it obvious that he was doing a much better job of holding that thing together at Clemson and making it look even somewhat reminiscent of what it used to be. I think he was kind of like holding it together with matchsticks. And I think you saw that with, we got the numbers up on the board. You go to a much less talented team in the Oregon State, and he's able to, raise them up 10 points on his QBR, has another great year. I think put him in a Norvell situation. I think you can see the offense get the closest it's been of all the quarterbacks we've had so far to what, maybe like a 2019 Memphis offense, just with, obviously upgrades at all the skill positions and stuff like that. And also, James brought it up, short yardage situations. That's something that we've kind of struggled with. I think we're going to be better there, period, with our running backs. Of course, he's going to leverage the line in a bit of a different way than Jordan Travis did, but he's a load, like James said, and he can get going once he gets going downhill. So I don't think you're going to see a lot more tush push kind of stuff in the offense. I think this year, I don't think you're going to have any problem with those 3rd and 1s, goal line situations. He's going to be great. And then the play action off of that, I just think, Norvell is going to be able to have a field day getting him in there. As far as like nationally, in the conference, I don't see it. I don't think he's going to come in here and be a Heisman, but I think he could definitely get you that 3,000 yards and up towards 30 touchdowns and be a quarterback you can go win the ACC with again and, make a run at probably a playoff.
Yeah, I'm going to evaluate him before he came here because I have nothing to base off of what he's going to do here other than projection. DJ U is a game manager. That's what he is. He's pretty good at managing, not turning the ball over. He's had 2 years in a row where he's only thrown 7 interceptions with, 315 attempts and 370 attempts. His last year at Clemson was 370 attempts. In his past season with Oregon State, he's at 315. Your yard average, all that stuff doesn't matter to me. The two numbers that matter is you've gotten 21 and 22 touchdowns in those past 2 seasons and 7 interceptions. To only throw 7 interceptions with 315, 370 attempts, that's pretty solid. That's a game manager. I'm not turning the ball over a lot. I like his pocket awareness. He doesn't get himself into a lot of trouble. And he also does I'm not saying that Oregon State's offensive line is bad. They were average. He was able to get the ball out quick. He technically had 2 targets that were worthy of saying that they could be a bigger talent moving forward. I'm not too impressed with what was around him, other than one guy in particular, which is number 7 in the slot, and that's Bolden. Other than that, I mean, he had a good running back. That's obvious. The run blocking for the offensive line in Oregon State seemed to be a lot better than the pass protection to me. So I'm thinking that what DJU will be at Florida State, getting developed under Mike Norvell to sit there and scheme things together. Maybe we watch a game manager turn into a top-sided quarterback on making – it's about making your quarterback look good. And I think Mike Norvell, with what he can scheme together, can do that. I think he'll be able to scheme some things together, some quick throws, and just some RPO things that I think DJU would be really good at. So I'm anticipating this to be the best ball you've seen him play based off of what he's going to have around him. He's got an offensive line that's returning that did good enough to protect Jordan and whomever else. And I think that the pass protection for our offensive line is pretty damn good. So I think he's going to be better than the statistics that are up there. By how much, I don't know. But I think that with Mike Norvell's offensive mindset, being able to – it's not about knowing your quarterback's strengths. It's about knowing their weaknesses and keeping them away from it. Don't force them to do the things they can't do. Give them the things that they're good at. It's, they tell you all the time to work, practice, blah, blah, blah. But people would, if you quit focusing on what you're not good at and put all your energy into what you're good at, you're going to be great at something. But we'll see what happens.
That's some life lessons right there, Chris.
What was that?
I said that's some life lessons right there.
Yeah.
Quit focusing on what you're not good at and do what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I came from a company that tried to do the other way too often.
We've seen that. We've been we've all been witness to that, Mark.
Yes, you guys have seen that to a certain extent. I saw it behind the scenes. Yeah, trying to force round pegs into square holes and forcing people to improve their weaknesses instead of focusing on the strengths. Anyway, my take on DJ here would be, of course, he comes in as a 5-star. He followed 2 legendary quarterbacks. First shot he got at it was when Trevor Lawrence, and this seems like forever ago, was 2020, had COVID, or at least under the protocol couldn't play. And he played against Boston College, a pretty good team, decent team. And he gets down by 3 touchdowns, and then he leads a tremendous comeback, throws for a ton of yardage, and hit the scene running. And then they go to Notre Dame the next week, and he puts up more passing yardage than anybody in the history of that stadium. And they lose in overtime. He puts up 40 points on Notre Dame. Trevor Lawrence comes back, and people, including myself, believed, okay, well, this is the next one in line. Couple things, though, and I'm certainly not saying that he was anywhere close to Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson, but man, somebody just shut off that Clemson wide receiver conveyor belt, because, man, for 10 years, it was as good as it is anywhere in college football. And they didn't stop recruiting, but he didn't have those dudes to throw to that would just outfight one-on-one coverage and pluck balls out of the air and high point footballs. He barely had guys just catching balls right between the numbers half the time. That wide receiver core let him down considerably. And again, I'm not selling him as being as good as the 2 guys before him, because he's not, nowhere close. But they had guys making plays for him, and they also had better offensive lines. And unfortunately for him, the first game he ever played as the starter was against an all-time great Georgia defense, and they just lived in the backfield that night, and he never really put it together. And as you see, 9 touchdowns and 10 picks that season. He never got untracked, and then he pulled it together pretty well the next season, and maybe they figured out some things that they could do with him. Now he's coming from a place where he had a pretty good quarterback coach in Jonathan Smith as the head coach, who knows quite a bit about playing quarterback at a high level. But I got to think Mike Norvell is going to be the best fit he could imagine in terms of figuring out how he can best get the most out of him.
Well, he lost 2 really good. Like, you got to think in 2020, they lost their big time recruiter in Jeff Scott, and that was the wide receiver coach. That Jeff Scott owned the state of Florida. Like, he was a guy who got what he wanted. And if you think about where the wide receivers were coming from, those Clemson wide receivers were coming from the state of Florida. He had a young man, Tampa Bay Tech. He really, especially in the Tampa Bay area, it was known Clemson was getting whatever they wanted in Central Florida when Jeff Scott was there. So you lost him in 2020. Him and Tony Elliott both were co-OCs for so long during Clemson. So I remember I made a joke, again, tongue-in-cheek joke, but during that time we had, during quarantine, we had the whole Black Lives Matters and a lot of other different things. Tony Elliott leaves in 2022, and Dabo made, well, I don't think it. I said, well, Dabo about to find out real quick how them lives matter. And Tony Elliott goes to UVA, and now you lost all of the offensive brain power that was there. And Jimbo tried to handle it in-house in 2022, and that's really where it all went bad. So you lost the opportunity to develop, and now all of those guys that Jeff Scott recruited, you're not having that same type of engagement. You're not having those same type of guys come in. That's why Jeff Scott got fired. Jeff Scott gets fired from South Florida being the head coach. Dabo brings him right back on the staff in a limited capacity. So that's kind of what I also believe happened with DJ. I mean, you it's kind of like if you look at Florida State when we were in those dynasty era, you had Mark Richt. Mark Richt was the offensive coordinator for so long, and there was just a consistency. He's the guy who switched Florida State from the pro style in '93 to the up tempo, spread them out, running gun type offense. So he was one of the guys that made that change happen for so long. Now you go to Jeff Bowden, you try to keep it in house, and it just doesn't work quite the same because he's not that guy. And now Dabo goes and tries to find Lincoln Riley's little brother. Lincoln Riley's little brother who did some things at TCU, but you're not even letting him call the plays. Like you're literally trying to, like, again, if you look at what happened with TCU, bigger than the recruits in the transfer portal, guys, they lost their offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator goes to Clemson, and this is kind of what happened. So there's going to be a step down, but I think with a competence and maturity should bring about results on the football field. So hopefully we'll see that with DJ. DJ, I had it. Oh, I had it. Let me give me a second. I'll bring it back up again. I know how to say his last name. I was doing good earlier.
Uiagalelei.
Yes.
Uiagalelei. You got to put it's two Lees in there.
It took me forever to remember. It's not so much the pronunciation for me. It's remembering how to pronounce it. Because if I don't say it over and over and over, then I forget. And you got to say,
Uiagalelei. Uiagalelei.
Exactly.
Uiagalelei.
Yep.
Took me a while too, but I think I finally got it locked.
There it is.
I would like to get the other Uiagalelei brother down too.
Yeah.
I know them Oregon people are shaking about that. I haven't heard anything actual about it, but I would definitely like to add another member of the family if we could. But I think everybody kind of hit the nail. It's going to be this best situation. What was that?
Is that just a wish list item, or is there something to that?
I know that some of the Oregon blogs were like melting down. I haven't personally heard anything about the staff being in contact with him, but his dad has made it very clear that he would love for that situation, but he's going to support his kids no matter what. But we'll see. I don't know if anybody else has heard anything about any contact between him or anything, because it would technically be tampering, even though there's no such thing as an employee contract, so there is no such thing as tampering. But yeah, he's not actually in the portal or anything like that at this point. So yes, just a wish at this point.
Michael Davis, thank you so much for the 5 spot. We appreciate it. I recommend y'all go watch the cinematic video of the Orange Bowl. Shit got me pumped for next year. Us against the world mentality.
That speech that he gave in the locker room after the game was awesome, man. When he looks over at Kalen DeLoach, man, if that doesn't touch you right there in the heart, I don't know what does.
Gilber Edmund was not necessarily a highly recruited player, but turned out to be pretty serviceable at Florida State with 67 tackles for his career and 11 tackles for loss.
Well, he was pretty highly, touted coming, into Florida State last year from South Carolina in the portal. He didn't quite live up to the hype that he had as a recruit in the portal. He was still a good piece. I went back and forth with some people. Like, people have this thing where they just want to crap on these kids when they don't live up to their expectations or whatever. He was part of a top 5 D-line unit. He made some good plays. He didn't, absolutely kill it. But he would have been a great guy to keep. I would have liked to have held on to him to be that 4th maybe fifth guy, at the end. That's a decision for him to make. He decided to go out there and be somewhere where he would be part of the plans to be, part of a starting unit. But, that just wasn't going to be in the cards for him at FSU with who we got coming back, who's already ahead of him. So they'll concentrate more on some of the younger guys and wish them the best. It's not a big loss, but it's not like you wouldn't want the kid there. So
us as fans definitely are fine. We want to hold on to everything. And I get it. But I can promise you that Edmund leaving was at bare minimum a mutual. It was mutual. I got on James's show today, called in, and I was talking about it a little bit. Not Edmund, so to speak. I couldn't say it yet because he hadn't done it. But I was explaining to people about Sapp and Hill, the two gentlemen that had already transferred out. Now they're in the transfer portal again because the head coach is leaving from FAMU. So I told everybody today that there was going to be more attrition. Don't be surprised when we tell a couple more guys to leave, because at this moment, which is the reason why I said we would probably get somewhere between 5 to 7 transfer portal guys, because right now you've gotten 2 in, which is DJU and MJJ. You only have 5 scholarships left at this moment. So you either have to have more attrition, they have to go, or you get 5 more guys.
They're honest in these exit interviews. I don't think people realize, like, this whole honesty thing just doesn't end at the, when they recruit you. After every season, probably after every game, they have, miniature ones. But after the season, they have a come to Jesus meeting. They sit down with the coaching staff and they tell them what the deal is. They're not going to blow smoke up their ass. Excuse my language. Like, Gilbert Edmund did not have any ideas of he was going to go in there and work his way up that depth chart. There's a conversation that happens. And, like Chris said, he's going to go somewhere and have a chance to start somewhere, and we wish him the best. You have to make room.
And like Chris says, sometimes you just we can't have it both ways. We obviously know that we need, I had a show where we talked about the things that it needs that we're going to have in the portal. So we got our wide receiver. People want upgrades at running back. They want another wide receiver. You want upgrades at possibly two offensive linemen. So right now that's 4 players. You want 3 defensive ends, 1 being Marvin Jones Jr. and preferably, 2 other ones being there. You want 2 D tackles. Hopefully it'll be 1 from Colorado State and somebody else. So what is that? We're over up to 8 or 9 guys now. We need 2 linebackers. We're over 10 now. We want a safety from Tennessee. You're at 11. You got to be able to find, for this to happen, somebody's going to have to leave. And you don't have to be, again, I always tell people, you don't have to necessarily be an insider if you can read tea leaves. I mean, that's common sense. The only way we're going to get people is if somebody's going to have to leave. This has been happening since well before I played. Matter of fact, tomorrow we'll probably discuss, I think tomorrow is going to be one of the best interviews. I'm going to start a series called with the Dope Boys, where I interview former players, and I'm going to start with some of my teammates. And I'm going to interview one of my favorite teammates, Lorenzo Booker. And in our seg, we had attrition. He came in with, it was at running back. He was a 5-star. Leon Washington was a 5-star. Thomas Hollywood Clayton was a 4-star out of Virginia Beach. Tom came in. Lorenzo didn't play his freshman year. Tom and Leon did. Tom fumbled the ball. Coach Sexton told Tom we had our intake meeting in February, and he said, right before signing, he said, you're going to have to gain weight. You don't hold on to the ball. We're going to make you a fullback. Tom was in the basically was on the first thing smoking back to Virginia and said, I ain't coming back. That was the first. And then I didn't even realize he took 5 official visits. He went to Michigan. He went to ended up winding up in Kansas State and ended up going to the NFL for a few years. But it happens. And then we brought in some new guys. And every year you bring in talent. And that's just the way things go. If you want to be a good program, you're going to bring in better talent, and you're going to probably sometimes see good guys leave. Look at Alabama. Like I said, Alabama had 9 guys hit the portal 15 minutes when it opened, and I don't even know what it was like the rest of the day. Georgia's got people jumping in, jumping out, playing double dutch. Ohio State's got people leaving. I think Texas is about to have people leaving. And watch what happens after the national championship game with Washington. And nobody really wants any Washington players. But watch what happens with the Michigan players. You're probably going to see some guys that are going to get phased out. And it's okay. It's business. It's not personal.
Yeah, I've been on my soapbox about this. Like a large chunk of the fan base was under the impression, like, okay, now we got a top 5 high school class. Now we don't have to. We can only get a couple people out of the portal. We don't need to go get all these portal people. We're not going to have a bunch of people to leave because the roster's to a certain level. But like we've talked about, you basically, and I said this way before, a third of your roster every year, it's going to go. It's just how it is. You're going to have so many that graduate, so many that go to the NFL, and so many out of the transfer portal. And what has Mike Norvell's absolute, ace in the hole been for the past 4 years? What has he done to get this program to where it is now? It's been the portal. Why in the hell would you not leverage that? Why would you only take a couple guys when you've just been absolutely nailing your evaluations at an extremely high level? So I'm all about it. I agree. I would, if we get 10 or 11, that would be great. But yeah, 7 or 8, I think, would be the bare minimum. And get those guys in here. It's gonna same thing with those 5 guys that went to Colorado last year. Everybody wanted, Florida State's losing all their people. Well, how did that turn out? Like the guys that are actually in the plans or starters, you'll notice they have came out and threatened, but 99.9% of the time they get signed and they stay. If people leave, it's for a reason.
I just like hearing that name, Leon Washington. I'm picturing him in his Jets green and white taking those kickoffs back. Man, he was one of the best you've ever seen taking a kickoff back in the NFL.
He's one of my favorite people, man. Me and Leon get a chance to – we talk about once or twice a year. Talk more now because he's in the NFL, so I see him in Indianapolis. When I got a chance to take that young man to the Duke game the Friday night before, just happened to be going to grabbing some chow and get some honey fried chicken. And boom, who do I see in there? Leon Washington and his son, which was crazy because his son is going to college. And I just immediately felt old because Leon Washington Jr. is going to be in college now. I feel like it was just a few years ago.
I just had to think about that. Is he still playing in the league or is he coaching now?
No, he coaches. He coaches for the
Okay,
Jets.
I was about to say, goodness gracious, I thought he retired a couple years ago. But
He's been coaching for like 3 years, 3-4 years. He's with Detroit first. And then came and did an internship with the Jags, and then went up to New York. So cool, such a good guy.
James, while you're talking, you might as well let people know what's going on at Den Media Group, folks. I always drop the link, and I've done it 3 times for Chris with Spear Addicts and 3 times for Den Media Group. For some reason, I'm not getting a clickable link to drop, so it's easy to find. It's right here on YouTube. Spear Addicts, Den Media Group, Renegade Report. Those are your 3 destinations.
Yeah, we had crazy growth this year when I stepped back, and I'm just a competitive guy putting numbers out there. My goal was to have 5,000. We got 4,000 before the year ended. We're like, I think 2 away from 4,100. Every time we get to an increment of 1,000, we give away 10% of the money, 10% of that. So once we get to 5,000 subs, we'll do $500 live on the show. And then we do a second giveaway of however many likes for that show was. So the last one we gave away $400 to, and these are real people. So Rosalind Baker, shout out to her. And then I don't want to say his real name. I forgot his actual his YouTube name, but it's different. But he got $84. And we give away tickets. We do all kinds of giveaways. But this year, the first quarter, we're going to have a ton of content. Some of it's going to be member-only releases. I was thinking about doing the Lorenzo Booker interview to be members only, but we'll do it to the public the first time. And then the next one, we'll do members only for the live. And then if you want to check it out later, obviously be released to everybody. We'll do a live broadcast for that, but you'll be able to see the live ask questions. We want more people to come and enjoy it. But when we got the combine, Florida State's got probably 10 to 12 guys that would be invited to the combine. If you're a Miami fan or other fan, like I'll interview everybody from the big 3 and who are some of the more interesting people. We will get all of those kind of things from some data, watching them be able to run their 40s, We'll break down again. It's going to be so that's the end of March. End of February, beginning of March. We have the Super Bowl content, which is going to be in Vegas, which is going to be crazy. And if you are a member, if you're an all-in member, if you are all-in member for football season, or if you want to go and you want to pay money to backdate it, we can talk about that. But if you ever want to go experience what I experienced in the Commons. So last year we had Rick Ross shoe party. We had the Nike gifting suite. We had the Adidas gifting suite. We had Puma gifting suite. We had Topgolf gifting suite. We had all these different things we did in Phoenix. Well, a lot of that stuff is lined back up for Vegas. My all-in members. If I could get, if I'm in Vegas and I get in, I'm gonna do my damnedest to get you in. Can't promise you everything, but you can come party like me. And then the combine, if you're an NFL fan, this is the only way that you're going to be able to experience all the top brass and your coaches in a day-to-day situation. You can ask them, just don't get weird. It is all networking at the combine. So like you come, you ain't got to work. I got to work, but you can come hang out with me and I promise it's going to be great times. So those are for my all-in members, and it's a little cost, but it's worth it.
Spear Addicts is live Sunday at 4:30, Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Chris, what's going on there?
To be honest, I'm trying to get a couple of the guys that are going into the NFL. As far as like Johnny Wilson, Trey Benson, Jordan. Well, Jordan, I don't know if he's going to go in the NFL, but Jordan Travis, and so on. I'm going to try to get them on to talk about how special this season was to them, because I think a lot of people just think that they're feeling like the whole season was a waste. That's not how they feel at all. So that's what I'm planning out right now.
George, we appreciate you. I know it couldn't have been a whole lot of fun coming on here doing post game after the Orange Bowl, but George delivered, and we appreciate Jen as well. George, what's going on there at Renegade Report?
Yeah, man, that was the 14th one of those, and it was definitely the hardest. But like you said, we got on there, we got it done. We had some fun with the True Knowles, we had some fun with the trolls as well, but we got it through. As far as over at the channel, me and Jen have been just on an absolute crazy ride here the past couple months. We're almost to 1,500 subscribers. We've got our memberships now, so we're adding those memberships. We've done 3 or 4 different cash giveaways. Probably give away another $100 when we hit 1,500. We got to have Kenny Shaw on yesterday. Chris was also on there with us, so that's the kind of podcast that's on the top right now. So definitely go check that out. And Jim was just texting me. We're working on a particular, maybe a parent of a particular player for next week. We'll see how it works. We don't know, but we just always try to get cool people on that just talking Florida State football and having fun.
George,
it's been awesome.
A couple of weeks ago that you were around 500 subs, and we were pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to get you to 1,000. All of a sudden, you're telling me you're at 1,500. Man, I'm looking over my shoulder already. You're gaining fast.
I don't know about all that, man. The rising tide, man, it's fun. I'm hoping maybe this time next year, Chris and James and you can be at about 10 grand and I can be where y'all are at now. I'd be happy with that. That would be amazing.
Good stuff. All right, folks. Again, it's Renegade Report. It's Spear Addicts. It's Den Media Group. We just get a slice right here, and I cherish it. Believe me, every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time, but you got to get the full deal with those 3: Renegade Report, Spear Addicts, Den Media Group. And we are off to talk some Miami football. And so come troll, come support, do whatever you want. We're going on the Miami channel here in a couple minutes here at the Voice of College Football. Guys, appreciate you making this work.
Yeah, and you've got a unicorn. He has a legitimate Miami fan who is like a good, breaker. He breaks down the games. He's a lot of fun to talk to. So, yeah, if you want to find out what's going on with Miami, that would be the one. That'll be the one Miami show that I will suggest for people to watch, is the Miami Voice of College Football.
It's not Cam anymore?
Uh-oh. Well, did I say something wrong? I'm sorry.
No, you didn't. James is just messing around with me.
Okay, I see. Yeah, we got to take shots when we can, man. But
all right, guys. Appreciate it. Next Wednesday, folks. We'll see you back here.